Johnnie Taylor, the soul singer who once silenced America with a sad song, died without a will, and after his death, a series of secrets were pulled from the shadows: illegitimate children, an abandoned mansion in Dallas, and a tearful legal battle. He was once called the philosopher of soul, but his private life was a song full of silences. 3 people walked into court, claiming to be his children, carrying with them rejected memories and a desire to be recognized. Meanwhile, his legitimate children tried to hold on to a legacy that was gradually being eroded by legal fees, tax debts, and quiet resentment among their blood relatives. This is not just a story about an abandoned house or a divided fortune, but the tragedy of a family that could not be reconciled and a legacy that was almost forgotten. If he was a part of your memory, even if it was just through an old song, stay. And if you want to continue your journey of discovering lives behind the spotlight, don't forget to subscribe to the Final Legacy channel. On May 31, 2000, Johnnie Taylor died quietly at his home in Dallas, Texas. He died at the age of 66, of a heart attack, after a life filled with music, the spotlight, and the darkness that few outsiders truly touched. The news of his death spread quickly through the R&B world like a long pause in a vibrant song. From Aretha Franklin to Al Green to Bobby Womack, many famous artists came to say goodbye to him. His funeral was like a final concert, crowded, emotional, and full of regret. But after the wreaths withered and people left the cemetery, the real storm began. Johnnie Taylor died without a will. A legend, an icon, gone without an official word about who would care for his assets, legacy, or memory. The estate, worth about $1.3 million, largely in the Dallas mansion and other properties, became the focus of a bitter battle among those who once called him father. At first, under Texas probate law, the 6 children were publicly recognized as heirs. Each would receive about $200,000. Everything seemed clear. But just a few months later, a strange woman showed up at a Dallas courthouse with papers, memories, and a denied truth. Her name was Fonda Bryant, and she believed she was Johnnie Taylor's biological daughter. Her claim sent shockwaves through the Taylor family. But that wasn't all. Another man, T.J. Hooker, came forward from Kansas City and claimed to be the illegitimate son. Then a third woman, Chiffon Brown, from Louisiana, showed up with a birth certificate that listed her father as Johnnie Taylor. From a death, began a series of tense court hearings, lengthy DNA tests, tearful testimony, and names being brought up not for honor, but to confirm bloodline in an unwanted legal battle. The truth was delayed, conflicts flared up, and the estate was gradually eroded by legal fees, tax debts, fines, to the point that the heirs, both acknowledged and not, began to wonder, what was left to keep, besides a name? Perhaps Johnnie Taylor never expected that after he left, what people would fight for would not be money but recognition as a part of his story, in a dignified way, not in the dark. What do you think about a life that ends without a will? What would be the real legacy, money or recognition? Tucked away in a quiet corner of Dallas, the mansion where Johnnie Taylor spent his final years was once a bustling place where he recorded, entertained guests, and sometimes simply sat alone, listening to unfinished demos in the living room. When he was alive, the house reflected his luxurious yet somewhat melancholy persona, marked by the passage of time. A large speaker system still stood in the small recording studio, a dark wooden piano stood by the window where the light streamed in. But after his death, the house was no longer a home, but a point of legal dispute, a frozen legacy. Because Johnnie left no will and the lawsuit dragged on for years, the mansion could not be sold, nor could it be maintained. It gradually fell into disrepair. The walls were moldy, the grass grew over the flagstones, the pictures hung crookedly, the documents were scattered, dusty, and many personal items were still in the closet, as if the owner had just stepped outside. For nearly 2 years, as the family fought in court, the house stood silently witness to each petition, each DNA sample, each denial and admission. It was said that during a real estate survey, a broker heard music coming from inside, even though no one had turned on the electrical system. They laughed and said it was Johnnie singing again, but everyone's eyes fell. Because this house was not just bricks and stones, but the place where his spirit once resided. When it was finally approved for sale, the $2 million mansion was no longer intact. Lawyers' fees, back taxes, and administrative fees had eaten up every bit of the property. Johnnie's ex-wife bought most of the house. The rest was divided among the children, but none of them really wanted to live there anymore. And so, the house where Johnnie Taylor had sung his last notes became an empty shell, quietly sitting in the middle of the city, no one living there, no one singing. There was a time when, if you turned on the radio at dusk, in the quiet of the suburban streets, you could hear that voice, low, husky, and passionate, as if it knew exactly what was going on in your heart. It was the voice of Johnnie Taylor, who not only knew how to sing a soul song with soul, but could also turn each line into an unforgettable memory. Unlike many other artists, Johnnie Taylor did not enter the music scene with audacity. He came to it as a devout, sincere churchgoer, starting in a small church in Arkansas, where singing was a prayer, not a stage performance. It was there that he learned that music was not about showing off, but about touching others, about healing something broken inside them. And then, when opportunity came, soul icon Sam Cooke saw in Johnnie something that few others had, an unvarnished truth in his voice. He invited Johnnie to replace him in the Soul Stirrers, handing him the microphone that had brought so many people to tears. But despite his debt to Cooke, Johnnie soon realized that he could not live forever in the gospel shirt. He craved music that was more real, deeper, more real. In the 60s and 70s, when America was in the midst of cultural upheavals, Johnnie Taylor stepped out of the cathedral and onto the stage with sensual, haunting, sometimes rough but vital Randy B. And then, in 1976, the whole country was going crazy with the melody of Disco Lady. It was not only a hit, it was the first single in history to be certified platinum, proving that a soulful Southern voice could shake even the most modern dance floors. People called him the philosopher of soul, not because he preached, but because he understood the human desire to love, to be held, to be forgiven. His music was like a mirror for weary souls to look into, see themselves, and feel less lonely. But strangely, the more people loved him, the more he kept things to himself. Behind the halo, behind the love songs played across the country, was a Johnnie Taylor with a messy personal life, nameless relationships, and children who had never been recognized. He could sing for millions to hear but remained silent when asked the most private questions. Perhaps, the only thing he could not turn into music was the part of the truth that he did not want anyone to touch. There is one thing Johnnie Taylor once said in a rare interview: "I am a public person, but there are parts of my life that I cannot sing." Perhaps he was referring to the relationships he left unfinished, not with his fans, but with the children who carried his blood. Johnnie Taylor loved a lot, sometimes deeply, sometimes quickly, just like the way he rushed into music and withdrew when it was too real. During his years of fame, he traveled all over the country, from small clubs in Chicago to big stages in New York. Each place had a shadow, a love affair, and sometimes, a child was born while he continued on the next tour. He married, had a family, had children, and also left them in silence. 6 children were public, living in different places, remembering their father in very different ways. Some grew up with a few brief meetings, some never knew he was their father until adulthood. And then there were other children who were never mentioned, never in any family photo, but carried in their hearts an unanswered question: who was I in his life? Johnnie never publicly denied those children. But he also did not confirm. He let everything drift into the gray area where love, responsibility, and the fear of being seen truly coexisted. Later, when some of his children stood up to recount their childhoods of birthdays without their father, of music playing on the TV while the person they wanted to see the most was there but still far away, people began to understand that Johnnie Taylor did not just write painful songs, but he lived in that pain himself, not knowing how to escape. And perhaps, because he could not be present in the lives of his beloved children, he left that voice as an apology that was repeated over and over again, throughout his life. Amidst all the controversy, the petitions, the test samples, and the years when no one dared to mention each other's names in the same room, people sometimes forgot, Johnnie Taylor was an icon. A voice that made listeners fall silent in the midst of a noisy life. A man who used his own hurt to ease the loneliness of others. His greatest legacy is not in the mansion in Dallas, not in the assets that were divided into many parts, and certainly not in the taxes owed. It is in the way his music touched listeners silently but deeply, as if each song was a real piece of life. Johnnie Taylor was not a perfect person. He hurt those who loved him. He was silent when he should have spoken. But he also sang songs that generations still turn to when they need someone to understand them, songs like Cheaper to Keep Her, Who's Making Love, Last $2 or Soul Heaven. Each song is a way for him to express the complexity of human beings, not black and white, but full of gray areas. For many who have listened to his music, the memories are not just the lyrics. It is the evening sitting with my father by the old radio. It is the vinyl record still in the wooden box. It is the first time I fell in love and also the first time I let go. Johnnie Taylor did not just leave behind music, he left behind a feeling of having lived through it. And perhaps what he wanted to leave us was not a perfect resume, but a reminder that sometimes, imperfect people create eternal things. Each song is a piece of life, a feeling, a truth that he did not say, but always sang. If he was ever a part of your memory, an old song, a quiet evening, or just a familiar name in your youthful dreams, please tell us below. Because memories, if not recalled, will gradually fade. And if you want to continue listening to stories like that, lives that were once brilliant, once quiet, please subscribe to the Final Legacy channel. We will continue telling, so that things that are not written into history will live forever in people's hearts. Johnnie Taylor did not leave a last word, but his music remains as a wordless emotional testament.